Cross-cutting issues occupy a central position in international development, shaping the effectiveness, inclusivity, and sustainability of interventions across sectors. Unlike isolated thematic priorities, these dimensions permeate all areas of development practice, influencing how programs are designed, implemented, and evaluated. Gender equality, human rights, environmental sustainability, and conflict sensitivity together form a structural framework that determines whether development outcomes are equitable, resilient, and capable of long-term impact. Development interventions that fail to integrate these dimensions risk reinforcing existing inequalities or producing short-term gains that are not sustainable. In contrast, approaches that systematically incorporate cross-cutting concerns are better positioned to address the complexity of social systems and the interconnected nature of global challenges. These issues therefore function not as supplementary considerations, but as foundational principles guiding effective development practice. Gender equality represents both an objective and a condition for broader development progress. The integration of gender perspectives into all stages of programming ensures that interventions address structural inequalities and expand opportunities for participation. Economic empowerment initiatives demonstrate how access to resources and financial systems can transform agency, particularly for women operating within informal or marginalized sectors. At the same time, the inclusion of women in decision-making processes strengthens institutional effectiveness and enhances community resilience. Gender-sensitive approaches thus extend beyond representation, contributing to the redistribution of power and the transformation of social structures. A rights-based approach further reinforces the ethical and institutional dimensions of development. By grounding interventions in principles of dignity, equality, and non-discrimination, this perspective shifts the focus from service delivery to empowerment and accountability. Participation becomes a central mechanism through which individuals and communities influence decisions that affect their lives. This approach also introduces obligations for both states and organizations, embedding accountability within the development process. Through this lens, development is understood not only as economic progress, but as the realization of fundamental human rights. Environmental sustainability introduces an additional layer of complexity, particularly in the context of climate change. Development strategies must account for ecological constraints while supporting livelihoods and economic growth. Community-based approaches to environmental management illustrate how local knowledge and participation contribute to resilience. Sustainable practices, such as resource conservation and renewable energy adoption, enable communities to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining long-term viability. These approaches demonstrate that environmental and social objectives are not competing priorities, but interdependent elements of sustainable development. Conflict and fragility further shape the context in which development occurs. In settings affected by instability, interventions must be carefully designed to avoid exacerbating tensions. Conflict-sensitive approaches emphasize the importance of understanding local dynamics, addressing sources of division, and promoting inclusive governance structures. By engaging diverse groups and supporting participatory institutions, development initiatives can contribute to stability and social cohesion. In such contexts, the relationship between development and peacebuilding becomes particularly pronounced. The integration of these cross-cutting issues reveals the interconnected nature of development challenges. Gender inequality, rights violations, environmental degradation, and conflict are not isolated phenomena, but mutually reinforcing dynamics that influence outcomes across systems. Effective development practice therefore requires a holistic perspective that recognizes these interdependencies and responds to them through coordinated strategies. Empirical examples from diverse contexts illustrate how these principles can be translated into practice. Initiatives that combine economic empowerment with social inclusion demonstrate the transformative potential of gender-sensitive approaches. Rights-based programs highlight the importance of participation and accountability in achieving equitable outcomes. Environmental initiatives that integrate community engagement and sustainable practices show how local action can contribute to global challenges. In fragile contexts, community-driven development models illustrate how inclusive governance can support both stability and progress. These examples underscore the importance of embedding cross-cutting considerations at the earliest stages of program design. When these dimensions are treated as integral components rather than afterthoughts, development interventions are more likely to achieve meaningful and lasting impact. This requires not only technical expertise, but also institutional commitment to principles of equity, sustainability, and inclusivity. From an analytical perspective, cross-cutting issues highlight the need to move beyond sectoral approaches toward integrated frameworks that reflect the complexity of real-world systems. They challenge traditional models of development by emphasizing relationships, context, and long-term processes over isolated outputs. From a practical perspective, they provide a set of guiding principles that enable organizations to design interventions that are both effective and ethically grounded. Cross-cutting issues in development thus function as structural imperatives that define the quality and sustainability of interventions. When gender equality, human rights, environmental sustainability, and conflict sensitivity are systematically integrated, development becomes more inclusive, resilient, and transformative. This integration not only enhances program effectiveness, but also contributes to the creation of systems capable of addressing the interconnected challenges of contemporary global development.